4, 3, 2, 1. Pretty sure we're live already. No, we're not. Oh boy. Let's see. Are we now? Are we now? Yes. Are we now? Yes. Are we now? Yes. Sorry about that. Let's see. A coffee maker. Sound seems to be working, right? Sound seems to be working, right? Yeah. Okay. Good. Just put that in there. You can't be healthy without friendships. This morning. Friends, thanks for dropping by, saying hi. For those of you who are watching and dropping by, my name is Toby and I'm 41 years old. And I train to live an active, self-sufficient and adventurous life. I do so by minding my sleep. I try to get between 7 and 9 hours of sleep in a night. I do so by minding what I eat. I try to eat within my energy balance, which is around 2,200 calories. I try to eat a lot of wholesome, healthy green foods, and I try to eat sufficient proteins to support my strength and muscle building goals on training days. So I try to hit around 1 gram of protein per day and slightly over that on days that I am actually training strength with weights. I show up to do some sort of a workout almost every day. However, at the moment I'm not, because I've injured my left foot. You might remember a couple of weeks ago I injured my back. That was something that I understood how it happened. My foot, however, decided to just swell up on Saturday night. It's not broken. We had an x-ray taken, but it is bothersome, to say the least. At least today the pain seems to be dissipated and swelling seems to have lessened a little bit again, but it could be better. So no training for me, at least till the end of the week. Hopefully I'll be able to pick up some mobility in the next week, and then the week after we'll be back to all of the fun stuff. So the only thing I can do in the middle of the day at the office is to sit on a stationary bike for 20 or 30 minutes, which is a big downgrade from moving 2.5 hours on a day and walking everywhere, and making the most of my day-to-day movements. So let's just be mindful of that as well. I need to be mindful of that also in terms of, for example, what I eat, because it's very easy to keep eating the same amount of foods, but then not actually using all that energy that I'm consuming because I'm moving about 2 hours less than I usually would be, not being able to take the stairs and whatnot, right? So usually I would ask you to hit like and subscribe in the podcast, by the way, if these are things that you're interested in. But if you're not interested in talking with me about health and fitness, but you do like me for whatever reason and you want to help me out, hop over to my channel and watch at least 1 minute of any of my videos, because you would be helping me reach that watch time goal of 3,000 minutes, which I am now trying to reach. And once I reach that, hopefully I can, add some extra features to the channel that I've been working on and looking forward to add over time. So that being said, hitting like and subscribe. Let's talk about how health includes social well-being, because I think that's an important topic. And for those of you who are regulars here, you know this story, but should you just be dropping by for the first time, I think it's important to understand, right, that we are going to get older. It seems to be a fact of life. Life expectancy seems to be increasing because of all kinds of advantages and advances, and that is a good thing overall. I think that is a nice thing to be happening to us as human beings. I think that is generally a positive trend. However, with those extra years, we seem to be getting a lot more sick years as well. That's not so bueno, so to speak. And why is that not good? Is because we don't get to enjoy the extra years we're getting because of prevalent chronic diseases that can be relatively debilitating and hindering to actually enjoying and having a good quality of life. I intend to change that for myself. And that's one of the things that I talk about in the podcast, right? Is how am I approaching that change? Because as I've understood it, a lot of these chronic diseases are either preventable or deferrable through lifestyle changes. Okay, that means that we can lower the risk of developing these diseases. It doesn't mean that we're never going to suffer from them. I think it's important to clarify. Also important to clarify that I don't give medical advice. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm just a dude on the internet talking about his experience in trying to live a healthier, longer, more active and adventurous life. Okay. So what are those lifestyle changes that we need to look at? Well, we need to look at our general health, not over the course of a year, but our general health over the course of, let's say, 3-4 decades. Something like heart disease, right, builds up, builds up, builds up, builds up. And then by the time you notice you have it, it is already too late. Because usually the first encounter with heart disease is also your last encounter with heart disease, right? We develop something called prediabetes or prediabetes or metabolic syndrome, right? Where we are hitting certain health markers in the wrong way. We are unhealthy, but we don't have diabetes yet. And this is about diabetes type 2, by the way, the one that can develop over time, not diabetes type 1, but diabetes type 2. And you might be able to reverse the onset of that disease through different lifestyle choices. Or if you're suffering from it, you might diminish the effects of it or even reverse it entirely and be free of it. And there's good evidence to support that. The same for cardiovascular health, right? And the list goes on and on. There's a lot of good understanding in the medical community and medical research about what is driving these diseases and what can help us prevent these diseases. So there's no reason to suffer from them because of our lifestyle. I think that's an important addition. There might be other reasons why we would suffer from them. And thanks for the person who filled out the poll. And I'm very happy that you found this online community then to participate in and talk about. So we are living longer, but we're not staying healthier. There are lifestyle changes that we can make now that are going to help us live longer, healthier lives. I'm 41. I wish I had continued to be as active at 25, 30, and 35 as I was when I was 15, 16, 18, and 20. But life happened. But seem to be pretty much back on track with all the challenges that being middle-aged and wanting to be active bring with them, like a hurting foot, a hurting back, stiff muscles, limited range of movements, that are all accumulations of movement habits and lifestyle habits over time, over decades. Okay, that's a different conversation. So within that context, right, usually I talk about today's training, but there isn't one because my foot is injured, so we're going to dive right into the topic of why health should include social well-being. Or why I said at the top that you can't be healthy without friends. There are a couple of different topics that I tend to talk about, right? We talk about sleep, we talk about food, we talk about activity, we talk about connection, community, contribution, we talk about hobbies and mastery, we talk about motivation, and we talk about, we reflect on the process every Sunday morning. Well, if we look at social connections or social networks or the communities that we're a part of, right, there are a couple of key decisions for health that social communities actually have maybe more influence on than we want to give them credit for. So for example, who are we eating with? Where are we eating? What are we eating? If you are a child or a teenager living at home, maybe you are participating in the meal preparation, but likely a lot of the meal preparation and food that's being offered is being offered to you by the adults in the home. So you're very dependent on that social context for the types of foods that you can get at breakfast, lunch, dinner, the types of snacks that you're eating. When you move into your student life, I spent some time in Boston, in college there as an exchange student, also in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, you live in student housing, you either have your own house or you're shared housing, and to a more or lesser degree, you kind of have like a meal day together with the house, or maybe multiple meal days, but you're always like eating with other people, right? That influences the food choices maybe you make, what is being cooked, what is the budget available as a student. In the United States, in Boston, there was a cafeteria, and I remember we had a very nice gentleman who was making sandwiches. These were American sandwiches, by the way. And I walked over there the first day, and I said, I'd like a sandwich. I'd like a sandwich with that turkey fillet, if that's possible. They were thinly sliced turkey fillets. And he said, sure. Do you want anything else? And he said, put some mayonnaise, ketchup, cucumber, lettuce, whatever. And then he goes over to the meat and the slices, and he puts 1 slice, 2 slice, 3 slice, 4 slice, until basically he took all the slices and he turned them back into a thick chunk of chicken fillet, slammed the other sandwich on top, wrapped it in paper, cut it in half, gave it to me. And I stared at him and I said, okay. And he said, is there a problem? I said, well, I think we're going to have to teach you how to make a Dutch sandwich, because in the Netherlands, the sandwich has maybe 1 or 2 slices of this deli meat, not as many slices as you would have a regular chicken breast. Might as well just put a chicken breast on it. So that social environment, the stories illustrate that social environment would then determine what was available to eat. There was pizza there, there were nuggets, there were fries, they had some salad options, but even the breakfast options were all the oversweetened cereals that were available, right? So it's about food. The different environments we're in, the social environments we're in, will determine, to an extent, what's available for us to eat, who we're eating with, what we're eating, how we're eating. I've said before, like food can be social, food can be pleasure, food can be functional. I think you can have pleasure and social together. I think functional eating is a more difficult one to challenge, but in general, right, I think food should be tasty, but it should also be very functional. It should be food that we eat to sustain ourselves, food that we eat to maintain a healthy balance, dietary balance, weight balance, food that we eat that we enjoy, but that we don't want to overeat and overindulge in, because energy balance is a thing. But the same can be said for smoking and alcohol. Social context can influence the choices we make there, right? You know, when I was a student, drinking was the norm. I think it still is in a lot of places. And you would drink 2, 3, 4 days a week, if not more frequently, to varying degrees, but usually, I'll say very honestly, a lot, okay? And a lot of that is given in by the social context. You're out, you're partying, that is what you do, so you choose to drink. Same could be for smoking. Some people feel that it's a part of the social environment. Or, the famous, I think, clip from Friends where Rachel, Friends is like a TV show, I know some people don't think it aged well, but it's something that was popular when I was in my teens and 20s, where she has to start smoking because her boss and colleagues go down for smoke breaks and she's left out of the conversations. So she has to start smoking to participate in those conversations. I think also illustrates that point, right? So, the social context of your life can have serious impact on the health choices that you are making. If it is normal to, changing food habits, changing smoking habits, changing alcohol habits are three of the biggest levers that we can actually pull to make positive changes in our general health and fitness. Everyone should decide for themselves what they want to do, but when we look at the impact on health, it's very clear that, eating better, not smoking, drinking less are good paths to better overall physical health and well-being, right? I also told you recently that I started judo, and I think it's a nice way to train, to be physically active, but it also has a big social component, right? Because you do it with 20 other people on a judo mat with a teacher, and you're learning something, you're participating, you're conversing, you're talking, everybody's there with a shared goal. And it's a great way to improve your social presence and your social network. It doesn't mean they have to be your best friends. There is a lot of benefit for us as human beings in simply being present around other people and physically and verbally engaging with them in a supportive, structured, and nurturing environment. So because the definition of health includes social well-being, right? And as a person, feeling understood and valued is very important. And feeling understood and valued is feedback we get from other people. It's not necessarily something we can very easily do ourselves. I value myself. I think I understand myself. Great. But when I'm interacting with someone, I might have a need. You see it with children, right? They have a need to be loved, a need to be sheltered, a need to be saved, a need to be taught. There are a lot of needs that we have at that young age that involve physical contact, conversation, expressing yourself, being cuddled, being loved, being taken care for when you hurt yourself. These are all things that happen in a social context. That doesn't change. There's no switch that turns off from childhood to adulthood where we don't need that. Okay? We might be better able to live without it for whatever reasons, but it is a need for us as people that we probably want to be aware of and want to figure out how we can create that network of safety and security in our life. Doing things together as human beings is key, I think, for our success as a species, but also key for our ability to live well and live long and live healthy lives. So you can get that feeling of being understood, that feeling of being valued from the social context that you're in, from friends, from family, from colleagues, from participating in a community. That's why in certain charities, right, they give little awards or moments of recognition, or ranks, or whatever you want to call it, to recognize the contribution that people are making to the cause. That's why we organize things around certain ideals, and people show up to feel that they can contribute to that cause or that movement, right? That's why we have people who volunteer to do things, because they feel it is important enough and they get feedback from their environment that what they're doing matters, okay? You want to have good conversations with friends, with colleagues. You want to be able to express yourself. You want to be able to set boundaries, but you also want to be able to share your experience, and in return also receive, conversation, experience, insight, learning, wisdom, or just a download from somebody else, and provide them with that feeling of being understood and being valued. It's reciprocal, okay? And I think it's important to keep that in mind as well when we think about health and fitness. So, stronger social bonds just tended to result in a longer lived life, okay? It's even been linked to reducing the risk of things like heart disease and strokes. So it seems to be good for your physical health and fitness, okay, for your overall health and well-being. Not just feeling, but actually reducing the risks, or being linked to the reduced risks of some types of disease that we are interested in preventing or lessening over life, okay? And if you look at the blue zones, some of the principles they have, right, it is loved ones first, for example, so keeping that family unit or that unit of people you deeply care about together, you see that is important in these communities where historically there were people who were where they had more centenarians than in other places in the world, statistically significant differences. So there's something there that we need to understand better. All of that being said, I think it's important for us, right, and we do this when we reflect with the Wheel of Living on our connections and relationships, is to look at a small change that we can make in our lives that will expose us to a larger social group. And I think one of the things that we can do in combination with the need to move more and the need to learn something is to join a sports group, like a cycling group or a running group or a table tennis group, or like I just joined a judo school. Join a place where the activity is physically challenging, as in you are going to be exercising as a person, where it's physically challenging, some sort of exercise in a social context. Find one that fits your budget, that fits your schedule, that seems interesting to you. And maybe you'll need to go through 3, 4, or 5 different ones before you find one where you land and feel that is going to be good for you, a good fit for you. But that would be a great starting point, an addition to add to our weekly schedule, where and when possible. A place where we go, where there's a social component and an activity component. And the activity really needs to be social, so it needs to be a club that doesn't emphasize performance, right, or activity, or is hyper serious, but is really about getting together, chatting, enjoying life, and then like doing some activity in line with that, or to support and foster that social connection and cohesion. So find one spot, or try to identify 5 different ones, and make a point out of doing like a trial run, a trial session at these places, and see if anything fits and sticks, to start investing in that social network that we need for our health and fitness. Friends, that's all I have for you today. That was quite the talk. Thanks for dropping by and listening, saying hi, answering the poll. I hope that I gave a good overview of why I think that that having online and offline physical communities in the mix is a net positive for our health and well-being. For those of you who are watching, thanks for watching, for being here. Hit like, subscribe. Remember, I'm trying to get to 3,000 minutes of watch time, so if you want to help me out, go over to my channel and write or watch one or two of my videos, or watch 1 minute of any one video. It would really help. Share it with a friend. If you're interested, share the podcast with a friend. If you're interested, I'd hope that you find this useful and helpful, understanding where I'm at in my journey, what I've learned, and maybe that will help you where you are starting in your journey on health, fitness, and longevity. Remember that we're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. It's the person we are today. It's going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow, right? So a bit of kindness is going to go a long way. And friends, the only way to get anything done is by showing up and doing the work. So I will see you tomorrow. Take care, friends. And remember, subscribe.